Hey, good morning, guys. I'm the Tech Prepper. Hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to pause our radio series on emergency communication and talk a little bit about medical. Now, this is something I have not done probably in about 2 years on this channel, but a company just popped up on my radar called Contingency Medical, and they have some kits that will help you self-support if you find yourself in a position where you need to treat a number of bacterial infections and some other minor symptoms. Basically, if you find yourself not having access to adequate health care, and that could be for a number of reasons we'll get into. So typically I don't accept products anymore. There are some rare exceptions, but I really wanted this kit and really like what the mission statement for this company was about, and really find that it would be an asset to my overall preps. So we'll get into this ReadyPack Plus here shortly. And there's going to be a handful of different topics we're going to cover, such as what this is, why I wanted it, how to get one, how to save some money getting one, and a few other things. Also, some customizations I did to my personal kit. So there'll be chapter markers and links in the description so you can pick and choose what you want. So with that said, I think we're going to start out with a little bit of a personal story and some context and background. So my wife and I have been prepping seriously for the last 6 to 8 years. And we started like everybody did, where we started with water, food, shelter, basically the ability to self-support for a 3-day window, 3-week window, 3-month window. And one of our gaps was medical. And we certainly had like our boo-boo kits, we had our individual first aid kits, we had trauma kits, and we both had some training. What was missing were things like antibiotics to treat certain types of infections. So we did our research many years ago, and we found that there were certain veterinary antibiotics that actually could be used for human use. Again, this was at our discretion. I'm not dispensing any type of medical advice. So we did stockpile a few, along with some literature that allowed us to more accurately identify whether we had a bacterial infection, which type, and which type of antibiotics would be best suited. So I'll talk about that at the very, very end. Long story short, the pandemic hit a few years back, and we were about maybe 2 months into the pandemic, and my wife developed a UTI, or a urinary tract infection. And at that time, there was quite a bit of chaos across the healthcare profession, and there really was a lot of questions we had in our mind of whether we wanted to put ourselves at risk by going to the hospital or urgent care. And what we decided to do was consult our book, take a look at some of the veterinary antibiotics we had stockpiled, and we went ahead and found the one that would be best suited to treat her UTI. Well, long story short, we consulted the book, figured out the appropriate dosage, and she felt much better in 36 hours and ran the course of treatment over the course of 10 days and fully recovered. So that cemented the need to have some antibiotics available to us, and the mechanism to properly determine which ones to take and how to dose it properly. So that experience now is leading us to Contingency Medical and some of the products that they have available. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Contingency Medical, and I also want to frame this in my initial perceptions of this company. So they reached out to me on Instagram probably about 6 weeks ago while I was traveling with a family, and they asked if I would review the kit. Now, initially I didn't feel comfortable because I'm not in the healthcare profession. I did like what they were about and what their mission objective is. So I asked them, I said, would you be willing to send me 2 kits? One to me and one to my niece, who is a nurse. And they said, absolutely. And the reason for it was I wanted to get some feedback from someone who is in the healthcare profession. So I think that was something that cemented a lot of credibility with this company, was the fact that they would be able to do this for me. There was also no script or anything they wanted other than me doing an honest review and going through the process. So the first thing they had me do was send me, obviously, a code so that I didn't have any out-of-pocket expense. And I went to their website, and very simply, there were 3 different options to choose from. One was the Go Pack, the ReadyPack, and the ReadyPack Plus. And I opted for the ReadyPack Plus because it is a combination of the Go Pack, which is their mobile pack, and the Ready Pack, which is more designed for home use. So you get the best of both worlds in a much larger kit. Once I did that, I moved on to the second step, which was the payment. And since I had a code, it obviously was free, but the payment processing was fairly straightforward. After that, probably a few minutes later, an email was generated asking me to go through and take a health assessment and questionnaire and fill out a health history. It took 5 minutes, pretty straightforward. And then later on, I received another email indicating that the kit was ready for shipment and that a doctor had prescribed the medication and that it was going to a pharmacy to be fulfilled. So in general, the process to actually get one of these kits was fairly straightforward. The medical history was easy. I didn't run into any technical issues. After going through that really simple process, I was really happy that this kit showed up at my doorstep. I did not have to go to a pharmacy to pick it up. And the case is actually pretty nice. It is reminiscent of like the GoPro cases. It's kind of like a hardish shell. So you do have some protection, if there's pressure put on the case. And it has a nice zipper. And what you'll find is a few things. They have 5 broad spectrum antibiotics in here, as well as a couple of other medicines designed for treating various symptoms. And the cool thing is that these are actually all in your name. All of these medications are prescribed to you by name and filled by a licensed pharmacist. So these are perfectly legal to travel with. I had some concerns before when I would travel with the fish antibiotics, going through TSA, for example. Not the case with this kit because they are actual prescription drugs. In terms of the quality of the medications, these are the same quality medications you would get if you went directly to an ER or your doctor. They filled a prescription for you. You went to the pharmacy and picked it up. So really quite nice. And like I said, these are broad spectrum, so they cover a variety of very common infections. And with that said, the cool thing that they include here in this pocket is a little antibiotic field guide. And this is broken up into 2 sections. So if you look at the table of contents, you first have common ailments, and it covers everything from animal bites to diarrhea and vomiting to treating things like a UTI, for example, or respiratory tract infection. And then in the back, they actually have an appendix that includes every single antibiotic in this kit. And the cool thing about it, let's go to one that I can actually pronounce. So we'll go to Appendix A. And for example, amoxicillin, it'll give you a description of what that medication or antibiotic is, and it'll walk you through all of the common use cases for using that. So strep throat, for example. It also gives you some advice on when to avoid it, and then some side effects, and then how to properly store these. And every page in the appendix goes through the same information for each one of these medications. Now, if you don't feel comfortable self-diagnosing based on this field guide, the other thing you can do is take a look at an email that is sent to you as part of this overall process where you are assigned a doctor, and you can actually go and request a conversation with your doctor, and they'll be willing to answer any questions you have, whether you should or should not take something. So it's a pretty cool, well-rounded service. And like I said, this kit in particular pretty much covers all of my bases in terms of things I've had in the past. Let's go ahead and talk maybe a little bit about some of the use cases for this kit. And if you're a little bit on the fence of self-diagnosing, we'll explore that a bit, and maybe hopefully I'll convince you of what I'm doing and the scenarios I find that I may find myself in that would justify me drawing from this kit. Okay, so I'm only going to be able to share with you my experience and how I see this used personally for myself and my family. So we do a couple of different activities, or we've been in scenarios where this would come in helpful. So we just completed a 2-week RV trip from Arizona to Oklahoma and back. And if for whatever reason we encountered maybe inclement weather that impacted some emergency services and we were unable to get access to medication or antibiotics, or maybe another lockdown that prevented us from getting back home, this would be a perfect scenario to use this kit and already have with us the things we needed to self-treat and self-support. The other activity we really enjoy doing is taking our 4x4 Jeep and overlanding. And we typically go to some fairly remote areas, usually for long weekends, so it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 days. Now, another area that we tend to do a lot is backpacking and hiking. And similar to the Jeep, we may find ourselves backpacking for a 7-day period. We do that quite a bit in the Sierras. It may be a shorter trip, but either way, if something happens when you're 2 or 3 days in and some infection starts to set in, maybe a bad cut, for example, you can actually start your treatment immediately. And then as you're able to self-support and get out, you're then able to continue the treatment back when you're in the city. Now, we also live in a rural area. It does take us quite a bit of time to travel from our home to basic services that most people in the country take for granted. So I also see this as a great tool if you're in a rural area. And then the most recent example is obviously the pandemic. If another pandemic comes in, access to medical, as history shows, may be challenging at the beginning until the healthcare industry and infrastructure is ready to help support you. In those scenarios, you have your medicines on hand, you have your field guide, you still technically have access to your doctor via the email method I described earlier, but basically it's peace of mind to being able to self-support. So that's kind of how I look at this kit. I kind of think of it as prepper insurance, for lack of a better term. All right, so based on all of those use cases, there is a place in my preps for this kit. And that brings up a good question of what do you do, because medicine does not last forever. So a year from now, what are my options? Well, Contingency Medical is in the process of working through a membership plan. And they don't have everything finalized yet, but the expectation is that I can join this membership and potentially have these things restocked when needed, presumably at the end of the year. So take a look at their frequently asked questions section on their website, and they will actually answer questions like that. I did do a post on Twitter or Instagram, and people asked about health savings account. Well, they have one opinion. I went ahead and wanted to do my own research, so I called my HSA provider and basically said, hey, this is what this company is doing. The medication is prescribed to me by a board-certified doctor, and it is being filled by a pharmacist. Is it okay? And they said, absolutely, go ahead and purchase it on your HSA card. Now, that may not be the case for everybody. I recommend you do what I did and just call your HSA provider. Now, the last question I got was about quality. And again, because these are prescribed by a doctor and filled by a pharmacist, they are the same drugs you would get if you had gone to a doctor and had these prescribed. So no issue on quality. All right, so in terms of saving some money, if you guys do like this kit, Contingency Medical was nice enough to offer $15 off through the end of September for National Preparedness Month. They also gave me a code, I'll put that down below, to give you an additional $10 off. So if you act before the end of September between both codes, you'll get $25 off. My code obviously will work for the foreseeable future for $10 off. And in all transparency, I do get a small commission, but it doesn't cost you anything. And honestly, guys, it's a great way to help support this channel if you like the content. Oh, and I'll put links down below so you don't have to memorize all of this. I'll put a direct link in addition to the code. All right, guys, before we sign off, I want to share with you, if you're interested, my customizations to this kit. It's a fantastic kit, but I'm a firm believer in tweaking things based on your needs. So the first thing I did was change out the bag. I'm just using an 8x6x3 surplus military MOLLE pouch. I picked this up at a surplus military store years ago, so I don't know who it is, but it fits everything perfectly. On the inside, let's open this up. I've done a few things. Number one, I am a firm believer in waterproofing everything. So I actually have everything in a 4mm heavy-duty zippered bag, and I have 2 or 3 of these bags to cover all of the medications. I'll put a link down below on where I get my bags from Amazon, also a good way to support the channel. On the waterproofing front, I also stick this entire bag inside of a 6-liter OSB dry bag, just because it is more protection and I like belt and suspenders. Now, since I do spend a lot of time in the backcountry and have developed Giardia in the past because I unfortunately had water from a contaminated source, I wanted to cover that scenario. And the kit does not include the medication for Giardia, so I have included fish soul. Again, personal preference, something I'm customizing for myself. Now, in order to make sure I take the correct dosage, I consulted the Medicine Survival Handbook, which I've shown on the channel before. But more than anything, I've also created, based on that literature, a laminated card that shows me how to treat Giardia using that medication, and includes the condition, the treatment for an adult male or female, and then the reference to the book and laminated for waterproofing. I've also created a laminated contact card so that if I need to reach out to the doctor that's contracted with Contingency Medical, I have these instructions easily at hand, and also in a way that won't get damaged. Just like the 4 ml bags I use for the medications, I've also opted to put the field manual within a waterproof bag. So with all of that, I have some confidence now that I have the right medications. Everything is waterproofed. I have the knowledge to use it, and that's the best we can do, right, guys? So I want to thank all the new viewers for popping in on this one. We're going to get back to amateur radio and emergency communication on the next one. With that said, I'm the Tech Prepper. Be strong, be safe, and be prepared. Oh, big thanks to Contingency Medical. You guys rock. Good stuff.